Daddy's in heaven. The words drifted through the phone like a breeze through an open window, soft, unexpected, and heavy with meaning. Bill Harper, once hailed as the tech shepherd of the Midwest, froze in the middle of his sentence. He was standing beside the towering glass walls of his Denver office, overlooking a city he practically helped build. And yet, in that moment, all he could see was the face of a man from decades ago. His hand tightened around the phone. "I'm sorry," he said instinctively. Who am I speaking with?" "My name is Maya," the girl replied. Her voice was calm, steady too mature for someone who couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old. "You called my daddy's number." Bill felt the breath catch in his throat. The number he had dialed just minutes ago wasn't listed in any formal directory. It had come from a folder found in a long-forgotten drawer in his personal archives, along with a letter that had shaken him to his core. That letter lay on his desk now. Bill's eyes darted to it, his chest tightening at the sight of the handwriting. It was familiar, achingly so. The careful curves, the pressure of the pen, the unmistakable capital M that started every sentence. He hadn't seen that handwriting in over 30 years. The man who wrote it, Marcus Johnson, had once been more than a friend. He'd been Bill's brother-in-arms in the war of poverty, hunger, and hard luck. 2 young men trying to make sense of the world while scraping by in shelters, stealing warmth from coin laundromats, and sharing dreams over dollar menu meals. Back then, Marcus had been the calm one, the one who could fix a busted radiator, charm a manager into a temp job, or sit still and listen when the world was too loud. Bill was the hothead, the risk-taker, the kid with his fists clenched and nowhere to swing them. Together, they had survived the streets of Cincinnati, dodged eviction, and learned how to rebuild their lives one cracked brick at a time. And now, here he was, decades later, sitting in a skyscraper with more square footage than the two had ever dreamed of renting, speaking to the child of the man who had once saved him. Bill cleared his throat. "Maya, I'm so sorry about your father." It's okay," Maya said softly. "Grandma says he's watching over us. He said if someone named Bill Harper ever called, we should be kind. He said you were important once." Bill closed his eyes, stung by the unintended truth of those words. Once. He sat down heavily, the phone still pressed to his ear. "Maya, do you live with your grandmother now?" "Yes, sir. Just me and Grandma. She's tired a lot. I help her when I can." Bill looked again at the letter. Marcus had written it with clear purpose, Senat, as a plea, not as a favor, but as a declaration of dignity. "Dear Bill," it read, "if you're reading this, I finally worked up the courage to reach out. I don't want money. I just want a chance. Not for me, for Maya. She deserves the kind of life we used to dream about." Bill hadn't known Marcus was even alive until that letter surfaced in the back of a filing cabinet he hadn't opened in over a decade. A junior assistant had found it while archiving personal documents for the company's anniversary. There it sat, forgotten ink from a friend long gone. "I'd like to come visit you and your grandmother," Bill said quietly. "Would that be all right?" There was a pause, then a soft shuffle, perhaps of Maya looking toward her guardian for approval. "I think she'd like that," Maya said. "We don't get many visitors." Bill managed a faint smile. "Tell her I'll call ahead." And Maya, "Yes, sir? Thank you for answering. You're welcome." There was a moment of silence, then Maya added, "Daddy said you once saved his life. But he said it like you didn't know it. And maybe that's the real legacy Marcus left behind, not just a letter, but a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness can echo through generations. Now we want to hear from you. What part of this story touched you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments wherever you're watching. If this story moved you, don't forget to like and leave a comment. It helps more people find these stories that matter. Bill's hand trembled as he lowered the phone. Outside, the clouds had begun to thicken over Denver's skyline, casting long shadows across the room. But Bill didn't move to switch on the lights. He sat in the growing dusk, eyes locked on that familiar letter, that handwriting, that friend. Marcus Johnson had been his tether to humanity during his darkest years. And now, the man was gone, leaving behind a little girl, a worn letter, and a promise long overdue. Bill rose slowly and walked toward the window, his reflection merging with the city lights. "I'm coming, Marcus," he whispered. "I'm sorry I took so long." Then he picked up the phone again, not to make another business call, but to cancel his schedule for the week. There were some debts that no amount of money could repay, but perhaps, just perhaps, they could still be honored. And that journey was about to begin. The morning air in Denver was dry and brisk when Bill Harper stepped outside the marble lobby of his corporate headquarters, shrugging off the weight of expectation like an old coat. He ignored the polished Lincoln waiting by the curb, its driver already opening the rear door. Instead, he waved down a yellow Caban anachronism in a city filled with black sedans and self-driving luxury SUVs. Colfax Avenue, Bill told the cabbie. East End, near 32nd. The driver glanced at him in the mirror, squinting. "You sure?" "Yeah," Bill replied, eyes already distant. "I used to live near there." The cab pulled away from the financial district and into the heart of the city's rougher corners places, where life moved slower and carried scars that didn't make headlines. The buildings became older, the paint more chipped, the sidewalks more cracked. And yet, Bill felt something oddly familiar stir in his chest. A recognition. Not of place but of struggle. As they passed a laundromat with sun-faded signage, Bill found himself thinking back to the nights he and Marcus had huddled inside one, waiting for the machines to stop humming so they could sleep on the warm linoleum floor. Marcus had always made it feel less humiliating he had that gift. The way he could tell stories, laugh easily, offer you half of his sandwich and make it seem like you were doing him a favor. Bill remembered one day in particular cold, bitter, early December. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. The job interview he'd scraped together bus fare for ended in a receptionist's polite rejection. He came back to the bus stop slumping under the weight of his hunger and shame. And then Marcus had appeared carrying 2 hot dogs wrapped in greasy paper towels. "One for you," he said with a grin. "But don't eat it too fast. It's gourmet." Bill had almost cried that day. Not because of the food, but because of the kindness. The effortless generosity from a man who had every reason to keep what little he had. They shared that meal on the cold stone steps of an abandoned church. And later, when Bill asked Marcus why he did it, the man simply shrugged. "Because I've been where you are. And maybe someday, you'll be where I am." At the time, Bill couldn't imagine being anywhere worth envying. But now, all these years later, he was the man with the view from the top, and Marcus, it seemed, had stayed behind in the shadows. The cab pulled up to a narrow apartment complex with rust-stained brick and a sagging roof. A crooked mailbox outside read, 7B, Johnson. Bill paid the fare and stepped out, taking a slow breath. The air smelled faintly of old fried oil and dry leaves. He walked up the cracked steps, pausing at the faded green door. He raised his hand to knock but hesitated. The last time he'd seen Marcus, neither of them had any except, perhaps, hope. And now, Bill was here with everything, and yet unsure what to offer. Before he could knock, the door opened a crack. A small, solemn face peeked through Maya. She was wearing a purple hoodie, too big for her frame, with the sleeves covering her hands. Her eyes lit up when she saw him. "Hi," she said simply. Bill knelt slightly to meet her eye level. "Hi, Maya. Is your grandmother home?" "She's making tea," Maya whispered, then added, "She wasn't sure if you'd really come." "I wasn't either," Bill murmured. Maya pushed the door open wider. The apartment was small, 2 rooms, a narrow kitchen, and furniture that had seen better decades. On the walls were faded photos of Marcus, in a work uniform, holding Maya as a toddler, and one particularly old picture of him and Bill on that church stoop, both laughing over a styrofoam cup. Bill froze. "Where did you get that?" Maya turned. "Daddy kept it in his wallet. He said it was the day his whole life changed." Bill looked closer. He remembered it now after that meal. Marcus had convinced someone at a corner store to take their picture with a disposable camera. "To prove we survived," Marcus had joked. From the kitchen, a soft voice called out, "Maya, who is it?" Maya turned. "It's Mr. Harper." Footsteps shuffled, and an older woman emerged, a tall, regal woman with silver-streaked hair pulled into a bun and tired eyes that still held pride. She wore a housecoat and slippers, and her expression was wary but not unkind. "You must be Bill," she said, arms crossed. "I'm Evelyn, Marcus's mother." Bill extended his hand. "It's good to meet you, Mrs. Johnson." She didn't shake his hand immediately. Instead, she studied him for a moment, searching, perhaps, for the boy Marcus once helped. Then, Slowly, she nodded. "Come in. I'll pour some tea." The three of them sat in the modest living room. A teapot hissed on the stove. Maya curled up on the arm of the couch, hugging a stuffed rabbit with one missing ear. Evelyn served the tea with practiced grace. "Marcus used to talk about you," she said without looking up. "Said you were a scrappy white boy with fire in your eyes and holes in your shoes." Bill smiled faintly. "That sounds about right. He said you'd gone on to do big things. Computers, right?" "Yes, ma'am." She sipped her tea. "So what brings you here now, after all this time?" Bill hesitated. "I didn't know. I didn't know he was still here, alive. I only found his letter last week. He trailed off. How could he explain that the world had swallowed him whole and he'd let it? That he'd left behind the one person who never turned his back? Evelyn saved him from answering. "Marcus didn't hold grudges," she said. "But he never begged either. That letter, it wasn't a plea. It was a father's last hope." Bill looked down at the teacup in his hand. "I'd like to help," he said finally. "Whatever you need. For Maya. For you." Evelyn studied him again. "You think this is about guilt?" Bill didn't answer. She set her cup down. "Then don't come here with guilt. Come with purpose. Marcus believed in people. He believed in you. If you really want to help Maya, don't do it from a distance." "I don't intend to." Maya stirred. "Are you staying for dinner?" Bill blinked. The question caught him off guard. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "She makes a mean grilled cheese." Bill smiled. "Then I'd be honored." That night, over grilled cheese and tomato soup, Bill Harper, tech mogul, billionaire, power broker, sat at a wobbly kitchen table, listening to a little girl talk about school, cartoons, and the dad she missed every night. And for the first time in years, he felt something more nourishing than wealth: belonging. The grilled cheese sandwiches were slightly burnt at the edges, the tomato soup came from a can, and the cracked linoleum floor under the table squeaked every time someone shifted their weight. But to Bill Harper, it was the finest meal he'd had in years. Maya sat next to him, dipping her sandwich with surgical precision and chewing thoughtfully. Evelyn, across the table, sipped her tea and kept one watchful eye on both of them, as if weighing whether she could trust the man who had built empires yet never returned Marcus's call. After dinner, Maya tugged on Bill's sleeve. "Do you want to see Daddy's box?" Bill hesitated. "What's in it?" "All the things he kept. Special stuff." She glanced at her grandmother for permission. Evelyn nodded once, though her expression was unreadable. "It's in his room. She keeps it under the bed." They walked down the narrow hallway to the back room. The door creaked as Maya pushed it open, revealing a small, neat bedroom. The bed was tightly made, the way military men kept them. There were two framed photos on the nightstand, one of Maya in a Halloween costume, the other of Marcus standing beside a white man in a hoodie with a busted zipper. "Bill." Maya dropped to her knees and pulled out a battered shoebox. The cardboard was soft and bent from years of handling. She placed it on the bed and opened it carefully, like it contained something sacred. Inside were pieces of Marcus's life: a dog tag, a coin pouch with bus tokens, a worn copy of Mice and Men, and a folded napkin with handwriting on it. "I wrote that?" Bill murmured, picking it up. "Daddy said you left it on his cot when you got your first job offer," Maya said. "You wrote, 'I'll pay it forward, I promise.'" Bill turned the napkin over. His own words stared back at him, youthful and idealistic. He hadn't remembered writing it, but reading it now, he felt shame crawl into his gut. He had promised to repay a kindness and had done nothing. Not really. Not when it counted. At the bottom of the box was a sealed envelope. The name on it: "To Bill Harper, for when the time is right." His breath caught. The handwriting was unmistakable Marcus's. "Have you read this?" he asked. Maya shook her head. "Grandma said it's for you. Only you." Bill sat down slowly on the edge of the bed. The letter felt heavy, like it carried years of unspoken truths. He carefully broke the seal and unfolded the paper. "Dear Bill, if you're reading this, I didn't make it to hand it to you. That's all right. I don't believe in perfect timing anymore. I believe in readiness. You were always the kid with fire in his belly. I admired that. You didn't see yourself the way I did, but I saw someone who could change the world. And maybe you did. I've been raising Maya alone. Her mama passed when she was a baby. It's been hard. The job's dried up. My health faded. The system don't see men like me as worth saving. That's not your fault. But maybe you can see her. She's good, Bill. So good. She doesn't deserve a life of shadows. So I ask this, not as a debt, but as a friend. If you can, don't let her disappear. Bill read the final line twice. Then a third time. Don't let her disappear. The weight of those words broke something in him. Marcus wasn't just asking for help, he was entrusting his child's future to the only person he once believed in. And Bill had almost missed it. Had that letter not been accidentally discovered, Maya would have been another forgotten name in a system too broken to care. He folded the letter carefully, slipping it into the inside pocket of his coat. He would carry it with him now, as Marcus had once carried hope for him. Maya was watching him quietly. Are you sad? Bill nodded. Yeah, I am. She slid her hand into his. Daddy said being sad meant your heart was still working. That night, Bill didn't return to his penthouse. He booked a small room at a quiet inn downtown and sat at the desk for hours, the city lights flickering beyond the window. He stared at a blank page on hotel, stationery, pen in hand, trying to write a plan, something concrete, something immediate. But nothing came. Only questions. How did one step into a life already shaped by grief and poverty and struggle and do something right without taking over? He woke the next morning to a call from Evelyn. Mr. Harper, she said plainly, we need to talk. When he arrived back at the apartment, she met him at the door with a stack of medical bills. She's too proud to show you these, Evelyn said, nodding toward Maya's room. But Marcus was in and out of the hospital for 2 years. He paid what he could. The rest, they're after us now. Bill scanned the pages. Labs, tests, late notices, threats of collection. He felt his stomach twist. Why didn't you apply for aid? We did, but nothing came through. They said we missed deadlines. Forms lost in the system. Evelyn's voice cracked, then steadied. Marcus worked until the week he died. He'd rather suffer than let Maya see him beg. I can take care of these, Bill said quickly. That's not why I showed you, Evelyn said sharply. I want you to understand what kind of man my son was. He didn't need saving. He needed a fair shot. Bill looked at her, eyes burning. And Maya, what does she need now? Security, stability, someone who doesn't disappear when things get hard. Evelyn's gaze softened. If that someone is you, don't be halfway about it. That night, Bill called his lawyer. I want to establish a trust, he said, for Maya Johnson, education, healthcare, living expenses, everything. His lawyer hesitated. That's doable. Do you want it public or private? Public, Bill said, and name it after her father. He paused, then added, and get me information on legal guardianship. I want options, real ones. After he hung up, he stood by the window, watching Denver fade into dusk again. Somewhere in the city, a little girl was probably brushing her teeth, wearing pajamas too big, waiting for a world that rarely made space for children like her. And Bill had finally found something worth building that didn't need code or capital, just courage. The next morning arrived with a grim grayness that matched Bill's mood. He hadn't slept much. The hotel bed was comfortable, sure linen sheets, feather pillows, the kind of amenities his life was filled with, but rest had stayed elusive. His mind kept returning to the face of Maya, to the slight tremble in Evelyn's voice, and to the ghost of Marcus lingering in every quiet pause. He buttoned his shirt slowly, as if each motion required a decision. Today was no longer about good intentions or symbolic gestures. It was about doing something. Something that lasted. By 9 a.m., he was sitting across from Linda Chase, his family attorney of 15 years, in a high-rise office filled with glass and tension. She was in her late 50s, pragmatic, sharp, and respected across 3 states. She had managed his will, navigated high-stakes mergers, and once saved him from a $12 million lawsuit, with nothing more than a technicality and a cool stare. But this was different. She's not family, Linda said, scanning the first few documents he'd handed her. There's no biological tie, no adoption paperwork, no legal guardianship prior to her father's death. I know, Bill said, but I want to help, and not just with money. I want to give her permanence, a life that doesn't hang by threads. Linda folded her hands. Then you need to start by filing for temporary guardianship. It's not easy, especially since her grandmother is still her legal guardian. You'd need her consent. She'll give it, Bill said without hesitation. She knows I'm not trying to replace anyone. I'm trying to continue something Marcus started. Linda exhaled, then tapped her pen on the desk. Even with Evelyn's support, the state's going to ask questions. Why now? Why you? You'll be scrutinized, Bill. They're going to ask if this is a publicity stunt, if you're compensating for guilt, or looking to burnish your legacy. Let them ask, he replied, voice low. I have nothing to hide. Let them dig. Linda watched him for a moment, then nodded. I'll start the paperwork, but be prepared. This will take time, and there's no guarantee the court will rule in your favor. I'm not asking for guarantees, Bill said. Just a path forward. He left her office and walked straight into the biting cold outside, the sky swollen with unfallen snow. As his driver opened the car door, Bill paused. Number, I'll walk. He turned onto the sidewalk and headed west, the city's pulse buzzing beneath his feet. He walked for blocks past polished storefronts, restaurants opening for brunch, a line of parents and kids heading into a library's story hour. Somewhere between memory and purpose, he found himself in front of a building that hadn't changed in decades. The old recreation center. The place where he and Marcus had once waited out cold evenings, playing broken-down pinball machines and talking about dreams that felt like they belonged to other people. The inside smelled the same, old sweat, aged wood, and something faintly medicinal. He wandered into the main hall, where a youth boxing class was in session. Boys and girls danced in circles around each other, gloves swinging, coaches shouting instructions. A plaque near the entrance caught his eye. It was a community tribute board photos, handwritten thank yous, faded flyers. Among them, a picture of Marcus's arm around a teen with a championship medal, a proud smile frozen in black and white. Coach Marcus, it read. Bill stared at it, stunned. A woman with a clipboard noticed him. You knew Marcus? Bill turned. Yeah, a long time ago. She smiled. He was one of the best we had, gave the kids everything, worked here part-time till his health gave out. That image of Marcus coaching teens, giving what little energy he had left, rooted itself in Bill's mind. Later that evening, back at Evelyn's apartment, he shared what he'd learned. Maya's eyes lit up when he told her about the boxing gym, the tribute wall. He used to teach me how to jab, she said, pantomiming a punch. But not to hurt, just to stay sharp. Evelyn chuckled faintly from her armchair. Said it was more about focus than force. I filed for guardianship, Bill said gently. With your permission, I'd like to make it official. Evelyn grew quiet. She looked at Maya, then back at Bill. You really mean to do this? Yes. Because the system will chew you up. They don't care how many buildings have your name. You step into a case like this, they'll dig through your life with gloves off. Then let them, he said. I've been on magazine covers. Let them read something that actually matters. Evelyn studied him for a long moment. All right, she said softly. We'll try. He didn't expect to feel so much relief, but he did. Not joy, not triumph, just the small, warm flicker of rightness. Maya crawled onto the couch beside him and leaned her head against his arm. Daddy said some names never fade, she whispered. They just get buried under dust. Bill looked at her. Then we'll dust them off. That night, long after Maya had gone to bed and Evelyn had retired to her room, Bill sat at the small kitchen table and wrote Marcus's name on a sheet of paper. Then, beneath it, he wrote Maya's. And beneath that, his own. He folded the paper and placed it next to Marcus's old photo on the shelf. Not a contract, not a headline. Just a quiet vow etched in the silence of a home filled with memory, hope, and the beginning of something unbreakable. 3 weeks later, Bill Harper found himself sitting in a government office that smelled faintly of old carpet and overused hand sanitizer. The walls were covered with motivational posters curling at the edge of smiling faces overlaid with phrases like, "Every child matters" and "Justice for all." It would have been laughable if it wasn't so bitterly ironic. He sat across from a woman named Gloria Briggs, the Child Welfare Services coordinator assigned to Maya's case. She was in her mid-40s, sharp cheekbones, tidy bun, and a tone of voice that made everything sound like an accusation. "I've reviewed your application, Mr. Harper," she said, shuffling a folder in front of her without looking up. "You're petitioning for temporary guardianship over Maya Johnson, a minor currently in the care of her maternal grandmother. Yes, Bill replied evenly. With full support from the grandmother, Evelyn Johnson signed the affidavit of consent. Gloria nodded but didn't respond immediately. She clicked her pen twice, a rhythm that grated on Bill's nerves more than it should have. Do you have children of your own, Mr. Harper? Number. Ever married? Number. Any previous involvement in child custody cases? Number. She finally looked up. So why now? Because a man who once saved my life is gone, and his daughter needs someone who will show up, not just write checks, not just offer condolences. Someone who remembers who he was and what he stood for. Gloria leaned back in her chair, arms folded. Mr. Harper, the state has procedures for a reason. We can't let sentiment dictate legal custody, especially when it comes to high-profile individuals. Bill's brow furrowed. What does my profile have to do with anything? Publicity, she replied simply. Children in custody often attract attention when linked to wealthy or influential guardians. We have to protect their privacy and emotional safety. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. I don't want to make Maya a mascot. I want to make her safe. Gloria studied him for a long moment. Then she opened the folder and tapped her pen against one page. We'll need a full background check, financial review, psychological evaluation, home inspection, and a temporary placement assessment. Done, Bill said. Already scheduled. And media silence, she added. No interviews, no press releases. You're not adopting a cause, Mr. Harper. You're assuming responsibility for a child. I understand. She glanced at the clock. We'll notify you of the next hearing within 10 business days. Until then, Maya remains under Evelyn Johnson's care. Bill stood. I'm not trying to move her. I just want the state to stop acting like she's invisible. Gloria's eyes narrowed slightly. Children like Maya aren't invisible, Mr. Harper. They're just waiting. Sometimes too long. He didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Outside, snow had begun to fall. It landed gently on the shoulders of his overcoat, dissolving before it could leave a mark. He stood still for a moment, watching families shuffle into the building, most of them worn thin by life, clutching manila folders and forms. This system wasn't built to save people like Marcus. It was built to process them, file them, forget them. Back at Evelyn's apartment, he shared the update. Evelyn nodded quietly, unsurprised. Maya didn't ask any questions. She just held onto her stuffed rabbit and leaned into his side as they watched reruns of The Cosby Show, the only station the old television could reliably pick up. Later that night, as he prepared to leave, Evelyn stopped him at the door. There's something you should know, she said, her voice low. Bill turned. What is it? When Marcus was in the hospital the last time, he asked me to record something for you. A message. Said if you ever came back, you deserved to hear him in his own words. She handed him a small flash drive. It was taped to the inside cover of a library card, a tiny thing, nearly weightless. He didn't want pity, she said, but he wanted you to understand. Bill nodded, too moved to speak. That night, back in his penthouse, the sterile silence of it making the apartment feel more like a showroom than a home, Bill plugged the flash drive into his laptop. The screen lit up. A video. Marcus sat in a hospital bed, thinner than Bill remembered, skin drawn tight over high cheekbones, but his eyes, those warm, steady eyes, still shone. Hey, Bill, he said, smiling weakly. If you're watching this, then you finally made your way back. Took you long enough. He chuckled, then coughed. I'm not mad. Life pulls people in different directions. You went and made something out of nothing, and I'm proud of you. Real proud. I always knew you would. His expression softened. I guess I just wanted to say, you didn't owe me anything. That sandwich, that coat, those weren't loans. They were what people do when they remember we're all we've got. He paused, eyes glassing over just a bit. But Maya, she's everything good I ever did, and she's gonna need someone who sees her. Really sees her. Not because she's a project, not because she's a memory, but because she's Maya, and she's worth it. Bill felt his throat tighten. So if you came back for her, I thank you. If you stay, I love you for it. The screen faded to black. Bill sat there for a long time. Then he whispered to the empty room, I'm staying. The next morning, he did something he hadn't done in years. He canceled every meeting for the week. He pulled out a legal pad and started drafting something called the Marcus Initiativa nonprofit aimed not just at helping Maya, but at funding programs for working-class single fathers, especially men of color, who were often overlooked in conversations about family support. Later, he picked up Maya from school. She ran out the front doors in her oversized coat, her backpack bouncing behind her. She waved when she saw him and climbed into the car with the ease of someone beginning to believe this was real. "You okay?" she asked, peering at him with those eyes that looked so much like Marcus's. Bill smiled. "I am now." She nodded, satisfied. "Good. I made you a drawing." She handed him a folded piece of paper. On it, a stick-figure girl with curly hair stood between two taller figures, one with silver hair, the other with a tie. They were all holding hands under a big, yellow sun. Above them, in child scrawl, was written, "Family Forever." Bill tucked the drawing into his coat pocket like armor. Because the battle ahead wasn't over, but for the first time, he knew what he was fighting for. The courtroom was smaller than Bill had imagined. No dramatic chandeliers or sweeping wooden balconies, just a modest room with beige walls, creaky pew benches, and a judge's bench that had seen far too many pleas for help fall on deaf ears. Bill sat in the front row beside Evelyn, Maya between them in a navy blue dress with scuffed shoes and her hair in soft braids. Her stuffed rabbit peeked from her backpack, its worn ears just barely visible. He reached down and gently squeezed her hand. She didn't speak, but she looked up at him and nodded, like she already understood that this day was bigger than anything she'd ever known. Judge Langston entered, a tall, wiry man, with glasses perched low on his nose and a demeanor that screamed impatience for drama. He glanced briefly over the documents before him, then looked up at the courtroom with a sigh. "We are here today to review the petition filed by Mr. William Harper for temporary legal guardianship of Maya Johnson," he began. "The minor is currently under the care of her grandmother, Evelyn Johnson, who has submitted her consent for this motion." He flipped a page. "Mr. Harper, would you care to explain briefly why the court should grant your request?" Bill rose slowly. Every word he had prepared vanished the moment he met the judge's gaze. His palms sweated. The room felt tighter, hotter, than it had moments ago. "I'm here," he said, "because I made a promise to a man who once shared his last dollar with me. Marcus Johnson saved my life not with money, not with influence, but with decency. And now, his daughter needs someone to stand in that same place. I'm not here to replace anyone. I'm here to continue what Marcus began, to make sure Maya is safe, supported, and loved." He paused, then added quietly, "and to make sure her story doesn't become another forgotten file in a drawer." The judge didn't respond. Instead, he turned to Gloria Briggs, seated at the far end of the courtroom, flipping through her folder. "Miss Briggs, what is the department's stance?" Gloria stood, expression neutral. "Your Honor, while Mr. Harper's financial stability and background are not in question, the department has concerns regarding his lack of prior involvement in Maya's life. There is no familial tie, no legal precedent for this kind of guardianship from a non-relative of public stature." Bill's jaw clenched. Gloria continued, "We are not opposed to his support. However, we recommend continued supervision under Evelyn Johnson, with Mr. Harper offering mentorship or financial aid as appropriate." The judge nodded slowly, tapping a finger on the bench. "And Mrs. Johnson, do you wish to speak?" Evelyn stood with surprising steadiness. Her voice, when it came, was strong. "I raised Marcus with everything I had," she began, "and I've done my best with Maya. But I'm old, Your Honor. My knees hurt, my memory slips, and there are days when I can't tell if I've taken my pills. I love this child with everything in me, but I won't be the reason she gets held back from a better future." She turned slightly to look at Bill. "Mr. Harper is not just a man with money. He's a man who shows up. He's already kept more promises than I can count. And if my Marcus believed in him, so do I." Maya tugged on her sleeve. Evelyn looked down, then smiled gently. "She wants to speak." Gasps echoed from the few people in the room. The judge hesitated, then motioned for Maya to come forward. She walked slowly to the front of the room, then turned to face the judge. Her voice was small but clear. "Judge Langston," she said, stumbling a little over his name, "I just want to live with someone who listens when I talk, who doesn't go away when things get scary. Mr. Bill comes to my school. He helps with my homework. He makes grilled cheese almost as good as Grandma. And he tells me about my dad. She paused, her voice catching. I don't want new parents. I just want to stay with the people who love me. The silence in the courtroom was thick. Judge Langston cleared his throat, shuffled a few papers, and finally leaned forward. This isn't a decision I take lightly, he said. Children need consistency. They need family, and they need someone who will be there when the headlines fade. He looked down at Maya again, then at Evelyn, and finally at Bill. In light of the consent from the current guardian, the readiness of the petitioner, and the wishes of the minor, he said, voice firm, temporary guardianship is granted to Mr. William Harper, with quarterly review by the department for the next 12 months. He banged the gavel. The words hit Bill like a wave. He exhaled slowly, feeling a strange mix of relief, fear, and something deeper responsibility. Maya looked up at him. Does that mean I get to stay? He knelt beside her. It means we start writing the next chapter. Together. Outside the courthouse, snow had turned into a light drizzle. Evelyn pulled her coat tight, but her face was peaceful. You did good in there, she told him. Marcus would have been proud. Bill nodded. Thank you for trusting me. She waved a hand. I didn't trust you. I trusted my son. He saw something in you I couldn't. Then she turned to Maya and kissed her forehead. Be good, baby girl. Listen to your new old friend. Maya hugged her tight, then climbed into the back seat of Bill's car. As they pulled away, Bill watched Evelyn fade in the side mirror strong, quiet, resolute. That night, Maya insisted on sleeping in the guest room of Bill's penthouse, which she now called our place. He let her pick the sheets and promised pancakes in the morning. As he tucked her in, she looked up and whispered, Can we visit the rec center tomorrow? Of course. I want to see Daddy's picture again. I think he'd like that. Bill smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. I know he would. In the stillness that followed, he stood by her door, watching her drift into sleep, the city lights blinking gently through the window. The road ahead would be messy, uncharted, and full of paperwork. Yes, but it would also be filled with moments like this. Moments where love wasn't loud, but steady. Moments where legacy was no longer a building or a name on a magazine cover, but a little girl's peaceful sleep in a home where she was wanted. A home she could finally call her own. The next morning, Bill woke up to the sound of small feet pattering across the hardwood floors. For a moment, he didn't know where he was. The sun crept through the sheer curtains of his penthouse, casting soft golden rays on the sleek furniture, the framed abstract art, the glass coffee table that no child should ever be near barefoot. He sat up, rubbing his eyes, just as the bedroom door creaked open. Mr. Bill, Maya whispered, peeking inside. You said pancakes. Bill smiled. The kind that only sleep can soften. That I did. She stepped in fully now, her hair tousled from sleep, dragging her stuffed rabbit by the ear. She wore a mismatched pajama set and a pair of oversized fuzzy socks that Evelyn must have packed for her. They walked to the kitchen together, her skipping, him stretching. The room, once cold and cavernous, now felt slightly more alive. Bill had never actually used his kitchen beyond brewing coffee. He opened drawers, trying to find the pancake mix he'd sent his assistant out to buy 2 days ago, just in case. Do you like blueberries in yours? He asked. Maya tilted her head. Do you have chocolate chips? He paused. Number, but give me 1 minute. He grabbed his wallet and fished out a 20. Be right back. No moving. No exploring. And definitely no climbing the counter. Maya giggled and gave him a mock salute. Bill jogged down to the small market on the corner run he had passed every day for 3 years, and never once entered. Inside, he bought chocolate chips, milk, and almost impulsively a coloring book with princesses and lions on the cover. Back in the kitchen, the pancakes sizzled as Maya sat at the marble island, swinging her feet, humming to herself. She reached out and began coloring with a focus that made Bill pause. You draw a lot? He asked. Daddy used to say if I couldn't talk it out, I could draw it out, she replied, not looking up. Bill flipped the pancakes, feeling something shift deep inside him. It wasn't discomfort, it was unfamiliarity. The kind that came when your life of order and control suddenly found beauty and unpredictability. After breakfast, They visited the rec center. Bill watched as Maya walked up to Marcus's tribute photo, her small fingers brushing the edge of the frame. "He was really here," she whispered. A staff member, a young woman named Serena, recognized Bill and smiled. "Word around here is you're bringing back the Johnson program." Bill nodded. "That's the plan." The Marcus Initiative had been formally announced that morning through a quiet press release, nothing flashy. No gala, no red carpet, just a commitment to fund local programs supporting single fathers and to reopen job training centers Marcus once championed in his community. Bill asked Serena, "Would it be all right if I volunteered?" Quietly, behind the scenes. Serena looked surprised, then pleased. "We'd love that." Maya stayed after to join a kids' reading circle while Bill sat in the back, answering emails and watching her laugh, really laugh for the first time since he met her. That evening, after dinner and a walk through the park where Maya made him stop and name every duck in the pond, they returned to the penthouse. The sky was turning a deep orange, and Denver's skyline shimmered against the fading light. In the elevator, Maya turned to him. "Can I ask you something weird?" "Sure." Were you ever sad when you were little?" Bill looked at her. The elevator hummed softly beneath them. "Yes," he said. "A lot." "Did you have a stuffed animal?" He smiled. "I had a worn-out baseball glove. I slept with it under my pillow." Maya giggled. "That's not the same." "No," he admitted, "but it helped." She nodded, satisfied, and stepped off the elevator into what she now called the Sky House. Later that night, after Maya had fallen asleep with her rabbit under one arm and her drawing book under the other, Bill stepped out onto the balcony. The wind was cool but not sharp. The city buzzed below, distant, alive, a hum of lives moving forward. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number that had become muscle memory. It rang twice. "Linda Chase," came the familiar voice of his attorney. "It's time," Bill said. "For?" "For permanent guardianship." There was a pause. "You sure you want to do that now? You've got temporary. You can wait a few months. Ease into it." "I've waited too long for too many things," Bill said. "I want her to know this is home." Linda sighed, but warmly. "All right, I'll get it moving." He hung up and looked toward the skyline again. Tomorrow, there would be more forms, more courtrooms, more skeptical questions. But for tonight, there was just this. A quiet home filled with the sound of small feet, giggles over chocolate chip pancakes, and the promise of a future worth fighting for. And somewhere, Bill liked to think, Marcus was smiling, his legacy no longer buried under time and regret, but standing tall in the light of a little girl's laughter. 2 weeks after the judge's ruling, Bill Harper stood beneath the creaking rafters of Evelyn Johnson's attic, dust swirling like memories in the golden shaft of light from a single overhead bulb. The air was dry, carrying the faint scent of mothballs, old books, and lives long boxed away. Evelyn had called him earlier that week, asking for help sorting through Marcus's things. "There's too much for me to do alone," she'd said. "And some of it, I think, should be yours." Now, standing amid time-worn crates and brittle photo albums, Bill wasn't sure if he was ready. Maya was downstairs, helping Evelyn peel apples for a pie. Her laughter echoed faintly through the vents, grounding him when the air felt too heavy. He opened a wooden trunk pushed into the far corner. Inside, tucked beneath an army-issue blanket and a carefully folded work shirt, lay a box of letters. Envelopes yellowed at the edges, each one labeled in Marcus's strong, no-nonsense handwriting. One caught his eye. "Bill, never mailed." His throat tightened as he picked it up, the paper soft and fragile. He sat on an old stool, the floorboards creaking beneath him, and slowly unfolded the letter. "Dear Bill, I thought about sending this to you 100 times, but something always stopped me. Pride, maybe, or maybe fear that you'd moved on and I hadn't, but I still wrote it, because some words feel wrong if they stay in your chest too long. You ever wonder how two people can come from the same broken place and end up in such different worlds? I did. I still do. But I never resented you for making it out. I was proud. Hell, I bragged about you, called you the one who escaped the maze. Me? I chose to stay. Not because I was stuck, but because there were too many kids like us still waiting for someone to look their way. Maya's that kind of kid now. Smart, strong, a little too stubborn for her own good. but good, deep down good. So if this ever finds you and you still remember who I was, don't let her grow up thinking no one sees her. She needs someone who's been lost and found their way back. She needs someone like you. Marcus. Bill folded the letter gently and pressed it to his chest. He sat there for a moment, blinking hard against the sting in his eyes. Then quietly, he gathered the rest of the box and brought it downstairs. Evelyn was sitting at the kitchen table with a bowl of sliced apples, Maya helping carefully arrange them into a crust. The house smelled like cinnamon and warmth, like a home built on the simple rituals of care. "I found something," Bill said, setting the box on the counter. Evelyn looked up, her face softening. "That old thing. He wrote more letters than he mailed." "He wrote me one," Bill said. "He never sent it." Evelyn nodded. "He never stopped hoping you'd show up." I'm sorry I didn't come sooner," he said quietly. "You're here now," she replied. That's what matters to her. Later that evening, back in the penthouse, Maya asked to read one of the letters. Bill let her choose. She picked one, addressed to "My daughter, for when you ask." Together, they sat on the couch, her head on his shoulder, as he read aloud. "My girl, one day, you're going to ask where you come from, and when you do, I want you to know you were born from strength, from love, from the kind of fire that keeps people warm, even in the coldest rooms. Your mama was brave, your grandma's tougher than she looks, and me, I tried my best. You don't need to be perfect, just kind, just real, and never forget, you're the story I'm proudest to have written." "Dad." Maya didn't say anything at first. She just sat there, breathing slowly. Then she whispered, "He talks like he's still here." Bill kissed the top of her head. "That's because in some ways, he is." The next morning, Maya insisted they frame the letter. They placed it on the wall in her new room just above her desk, right beside the drawing she'd made of her forever family. As spring crept into Denver, the Marcus Initiative quietly gained momentum. Bill used his connections to partner with local organizations, revamp after-school programs, and offer small business grants to single fathers. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was necessary and deeply personal. He started visiting the rec center every Wednesday, teaching basic tech skills to teens who reminded him too much of his younger self. Maya often tagged along, reading in the corner or helping distribute snacks. She had taken to calling it Daddy's place. One evening, after a particularly long session, Bill sat alone in the gym's old bleachers, watching the lights flicker overhead. Serena sat beside him, nursing a paper cup of lukewarm coffee. "You're different now," she said. He glanced at her. "How so?" "You don't look at your watch every 5 minutes. You smile more. And you listen." Bill chuckled. "Guess I'm learning." Serena nodded. Funny what a little girl can teach a grown man. He looked across the court, where Maya was showing a younger boy how to tie his shoes. "She's teaching me how to stay," Bill said. "Not just show up, but stay." Serena smiled. "Then you're already doing better than most." Back at home that night, Maya crawled into bed with her stuffed rabbit and whispered to Bill as he tucked her in. "Do you think Daddy would like the way things are now?" Bill didn't hesitate. "I think he'd be proud." Maya nodded, eyes fluttering closed. "Good. Me too." And as the city quieted outside, Bill sat by her side, one hand resting gently over hers, knowing that for the first time in his life, he wasn't running from the path, was building something in its name. Something lasting. Something whole. Sunday mornings had a new rhythm now. Not the kind Bill Harper was used to, the hurried pre-meeting coffee and tie adjusting in the back seat of a chauffeured car, but something slower, warmer, threaded with the smell of pancakes, the hum of gospel music from the kitchen radio, and the gentle urgency of Maya hunting for her church shoes. They were scuffed white flats with a fading pink strap, far too worn for the pews of Denver's First Baptist, where every deacon looked like they stepped out of a catalog. But Maya insisted on them, said they helped her remember where she came from. Bill had offered to buy new ones, but Evelyn had pulled him aside and said, "Let her hold on to what grounds her. The world will offer her glitter. Let her keep her roots." So, Sunday after Sunday, Maya wore her scuffed shoes and walked proudly beside Bill up the steps of the old brick church. People stared, whispered sometimes, A billionaire in the front row beside a little black girl with hair beads and unmatched socks. It didn't matter. Maya sang louder than anyone during the hymns, and when the pastor mentioned Marcus Johnson in his sermon, her shoulders straightened like she'd just won something. After service, while Maya and the other kids ran through the courtyard, Evelyn joined Bill by the coffee table outside the fellowship hall. "You know they're talking," she said without looking at him. "I know. And you care?" He shook his head. "Not in the ways that matter." She nodded, sipping her tea. "Good. Because some of them still see a story they can't place, and stories they don't understand make people uncomfortable. I'm not here to be understood," he said softly. "Just to be present." That afternoon, they stopped at a diner on 17th Street, where the waitresses wore aprons embroidered with sunflowers and called everyone on. Maya ordered chicken fingers and sweet tea, and Bill asked for the meatloaf special, stunning the staff who probably expected him to order quinoa and kale. As they waited, Maya pulled out her sketchbook, flipping to a new page. "I'm drawing our family tree," she announced. "But it's not like the ones at school." "How so?" Bill asked. "Because mine has more than one trunk," she said, tongue poking from the corner of her mouth as she concentrated. "Daddy's one trunk, Grandma's another, and you're the third." "3 trunks?" "Yep, but they grow toward each other." Bill leaned back, staring at her, this little force of nature who had taken grief and drawn it into art, who had shaped her pain into something the world could learn from, if only they paid attention. Back at the penthouse, he tucked her in with her rabbit and watched as her breathing slowed into sleep. Then he went to his office, logged into his foundation's portal, and read through the latest reports from the Marcus Initiative. There was one from a center in Atlanta, 14 new job placements, 5 high school graduates, who credited the program for keeping them off the streets. Another from Detroit, free daycare support for working single fathers. It was working. Quietly, steadily. Something Marcus had once dreamed in the back of a bus was now changing lives. But change wasn't always welcomed. The next morning, Bill arrived at the rec center to find a crowd gathered at the front. Spray paint defaced the entrance. "Charity for Show" scrawled in red across the doors. Serena met him at the steps, arms crossed tightly. "They hit us last night. No one saw anything." Bill stared at the words. They weren't just graffiti, they were challenge, doubt, fear disguised as accusation. "We'll clean it up," he said, pulling off his coat. "Today." Serena raised an eyebrow. "You?" "Yes, me, and anyone else who believes this place matters." By midday, volunteers had scrubbed the doors, repainted the entryway, and replaced the sign. Maya arrived after school with a bucket and her tiny gloves, determined to help scrub even though the work was already done. "You know," she said as they stood side by side wiping down the windows, "Daddy used to say when people get scared, they get loud." Bill looked at her, heart aching. "You scared?" "Nope, just tired of folks being loud about the wrong things." That evening, local news caught wind of the vandalism. A reporter showed up, hoping for a statement. Bill declined. Instead, he wrote a short post on the initiative's website. "We weren't built for applause. We were built for impact. Paint can be washed, walls can be restored, but the dignity we fight for, that stays. Thank you, Marcus. We're just getting started." It went viral within hours. The next Sunday, Maya's shoes were a little more worn, and the pews a little fuller. More parents brought their kids to the center. More fathers asked how to sign up for training. More names, more stories, more lives beginning to shift. Bill sat at the back of the church that time, letting Maya sit beside Evelyn up front. He watched as she sang, her voice a thread in the fabric of something larger than them both. He thought of Marcus, of sandwiches split in silence, of letters never mailed, of promises made across time and struggle. He was still learning, still stumbling, still unsure, but he was here, and that, for now, was enough. A light rain pattered softly against the wide windows of the penthouse. As Bill sat on the living room floor, Maya beside him with her latest school project sprawled across the rug. She was building a diorama, a place that feels like home, and had chosen to recreate the rec center, complete with miniature bleachers made from popsicle sticks and hand-drawn posters on the walls. She held up a tiny cutout of Marcus. "I made him from felt," she said proudly. "He goes right at the door. That's where he used to stand." Bill smiled, his throat catching slightly. "He'd love that." She glanced up. Do you remember what he used to say when kids walked in? Bill paused. The memory returned with a sharp clarity, Marcus's deep voice echoing in dusty halls, the words simple but unwavering. He'd say, "You matter the second you walk in. Nothing before this door defines you." Maya nodded, as if those words carried a weight she couldn't fully understand but knew was important. Later that evening, after Maya had gone to bed, Bill found himself alone in his office, scrolling through an old inbox he hadn't opened in years. It was tied to a youth mentoring program he had once pledged support to before his world became boardrooms and earnings calls. In the archive, a name appeared that sent a chill through him: Victor Greaves. Victor had grown up with them. Marcus, Bill, and Victor were once inseparable, a trio that survived the streets together. But while Marcus became a mentor and Bill climbed the ladder of business, Victor had drifted. Petty crime, jail time, then silence. Yet there it was, an email from 3 months ago, just after Marcus's funeral. Short, unpolished. "I heard Marcus passed. Didn't know if you'd care. If you ever want to know what really happened that night in '97, I'll be at St. Agnes shelter most nights. Still breathing, barely." Bill stared at the screen. That night in '97, the night that changed everything. The night he left without goodbye, carrying guilt he had buried beneath a fortune. He thought of letting it go, of leaving ghosts where they belonged. But Maya's drawing sat on the edge of his desk, 3 trunks growing toward each other. If he was serious about being part of that tree, he couldn't ignore the roots. The next morning, he told Evelyn he'd be late picking Maya up from school. Then he drove himself, no driver, no assistant, to St. Agnes shelter on the east side of town. The shelter hadn't changed in decades. Same cracked pavement, same rusted sign. Inside, the smell of bleach and old wood mixed with the quiet shuffle of men and women trying to disappear between the walls. He found Victor in the common room, hunched over a bowl of soup, eyes sharp despite the years. "Well, I'll be damned," Victor said, not standing. "Harper in the flesh. Still got that jawline. Still dressing like GQ threw up on you." Bill didn't smile. He sat across from him, fingers interlaced. "I got your message." Victor stirred his soup. "Thought you might. What happened that night?" Victor leaned back. "You really want to stir that pot after all this time?" "I need to." Victor exhaled. "You remember the deal Marcus turned down? That warehouse job with a side hustle looked clean on the surface, but it was dirty underneath?" Bill nodded. "Yeah." He said no. "Well, I didn't. I thought I was smarter. I took the job. And when it blew up, cops, raids, people hauled Inglis, whose name came up on the paperwork." Bill's heart sank. "Marcus. He covered for me," Victor said flatly. "Said he was the one who helped load trucks, signed for shipments. He did it so I could take care of my kid. Said he'd handle the fallout." "And you let him?" Victor's eyes met his. "I was scared. And stupid. He lost his job, lost a shot at something better, spent the next decade rebuilding his name in that community." Bill stared, jaw clenched. "I came to his funeral," Victor said, voice softer now. "Didn't go inside. Didn't deserve to. But I saw you, and I saw her. That girl. She's got his eyes, man. His fire." Bill stood, his chest tight. "Why tell me now?" "Because you came back," Victor replied. "And because you're the only one who might set that story right." That night, Bill couldn't sleep. He sat on the balcony, staring out at the city, Marcus's letter open on his lap. "You don't owe me anything." But now Bill knew that wasn't true. The next morning, he took Maya to school early, then drove straight to the rec center. Serena was there already, setting up for the after-school rush. "I want to add something to the center," he told her. "A wall. Not just for tributes but for truths. Stories people never got to tell. Things they buried to survive." She studied him. "Like Marcus?" He nodded. "Especially Marcus." That afternoon, Bill gave a short, impromptu speech at the rec center. He wasn't just a coach, he said. He was a protector. A man who carried burdens that weren't his because he believed in second chances. "It's time we tell the whole story." The room was silent when he finished. Then someone clapped, then another, and then everyone stood. Back home, as he tucked Maya into bed, she asked, "Did you fix something today?" Bill smiled. "A little piece of it, maybe." She yawned. "Good. Then Daddy's proud." And in that quiet room, under the soft hum of Denver's night, Bill finally felt it, not the weight of guilt, but the lightness of redemption. The kind you don't buy or build, but earn in truth at a time. The new wall at the rec center was modest in design, painted a soft matte gray, framed with reclaimed wood from the old gym floor, and titled simply in hand-carved letters, "Voices Unheard." But its meaning stretched far beyond its materials. Beneath the title, stories began to bloom, short notes, letters, confessions, all handwritten and laminated, pinned carefully with brass tacks. They came from kids, from former inmates, from fathers trying to start again. They spoke of shame and silence, of missed chances and tiny redemptions. One panel stood at the center, encased behind glass. It held Marcus's story told truthfully for the first time. It described how he'd taken blame for another man's mistake, not for glory, but for mercy. Bill had written it with trembling hands, choosing every word with reverence. Underneath the story was a photo. Marcus, in his rec center shirt, arms crossed, laughing at something off camera. The day it was unveiled, Maya stood in front of it for a long time. She read every line carefully, lips moving quietly. When she was done, she looked up at Bill. "I always knew he was brave," she said, "but now everyone else knows too." Bill bent beside her. "Truth takes time, sweetheart, but it's always worth the wait." Later that week, word spread quickly through the neighborhood. Local news covered the story. A regional podcast featured an interview with Serena and a few program graduates. Fathers who had never stepped into the rec center before started showing up, asking questions, signing up for classes. One even brought his teenage son, standing awkwardly by the door as the father muttered, "Thought it was time he learned something real." Maya became something of a fixture at the center. When she wasn't helping Bill in the office or drawing new welcome posters for the walls, she was at the snack table, carefully handing out oranges and granola bars to every child who walked in, always with a reminder, "You belong here." One afternoon, as Bill was cleaning up after a community workshop, Serena approached him with a guarded expression. "You've got company," she said. Bill looked up to see a woman standing in the hallway. She was tall, her face framed by silver-streaked braids, and her eyes held a cautious recognition. She stepped forward slowly. "You're William Harper," she said, voice low, thick with memory. "I'm Althea, Marcus's sister." Bill's chest tightened. "He talked about you." Her smile was tired, almost sorrowful. "We weren't close, not like we should have been. I stayed away too long, angry about things that didn't matter anymore, but I heard what you did. The wall, the truth." I owed him that much," Bill said. Althea looked past him, toward the sound of Maya laughing with Serena in the background. "She's grown. She's everything." They sat down at one of the folding tables in the empty rec room. Althea reached into her purse and pulled out a small journal, its leather cover worn, the corners bent from use. "He kept this," she said. "Wrote in it when things got heavy. I thought maybe you and Maya should have it." Bill took the journal gently, heart thudding. Back at the penthouse that night, after Maya had gone to bed, he opened the journal at his desk. Marcus's handwriting, looping and strong, filled the pages. Some entries were about the center notes, about repairs, memories of kids who'd moved away, dreams of expanding. But others were deeply personal. Reflections on loss, on missed chances, on fatherhood. One entry stood out. "I know I'm not perfect, but I get up every morning and show up for my girl. That's what matters. That's what I want her to remember. That when the world asked if she was worth the effort, I said yes. Every time." Bill closed the journal and sat back, eyes wet. The past wasn't a chain anymore. It was a bridge. The next morning, Maya found him in the kitchen making oatmeal, something she had declared, not as good as pancakes, but better than nothing. She spotted the journal on the table. "Whose is that?" "Your dad's." She picked it up carefully, flipping through the pages. Her finger stopped on one entry, and she read quietly. Then, without looking up, she said, "Do you think he knew how much I loved him?" Bill crouched beside her, voice steady. "I think he felt it every single day, even now." She hugged the journal to her chest. "Then I want to keep this, so I can still talk to him." "You can," he said. "Anytime." That weekend, they returned to the church. Pastor Clayton asked Bill to say a few words after the sermon. The congregation had watched this journey unfold from the sidelines, some with support, others with skepticism. Bill stood before them in his simple navy suit, no fanfare, no pre-written speech. "I don't stand here today as a man who got it all right," he began. "I stand here as someone who waited too long to do the right thing, and someone who now wakes up every day determined not to wait anymore." He looked at Maya, seated in the front pew, legs swinging. "She gave me purpose. Her father gave me a chance. And this community gave me a second beginning." There were tears, nods, even a few amens whispered under breath. As they left the church, an older man stopped Bill outside. "My grandson's been hanging around your center," he said. "Says you listen more than you talk. That's rare." Bill smiled. "I'm still learning." The man shook his hand. "Then keep learning. We need more of that." That night, as the city wrapped itself in quiet, Bill watched Maya fall asleep with the journal still resting on her chest. And in that stillness, he knew something he hadn't always believed. Legacy isn't what we leave behind. It's what we nurture in the hearts of those still rising. And Marcus Johnson's legacy was very much alive. The invitation arrived on thick cardstock, tucked neatly inside a navy envelope edged in gold. It bore the seal of the Denver Business Alliance and an embossed line that read, "Annual Philanthropy and Progress Summit, honoring transformational leaders." Bill turned it over in his hands, the weight of it both literal and symbolic. He'd been invited to this event countless times before, always as a featured donor, sometimes as a keynote speaker. But this year, his name was listed among the honorees. What struck him more than the honor, though, was the final line, "Guest seats available by request." He looked across the room, where Maya sat at the kitchen table surrounded by colored pencils and a pile of homework. Her head was tilted as she worked on a short essay, "Someone I Admire." Every now and then, she would pause, chew the end of her pencil, and glance at him. "What you writing?" he asked, walking over. She grinned. "It's a surprise." Bill laughed. "If it's about that time I burned the grilled cheese, you better make it sound heroic." Maya snorted. "Nope, it's about someone braver than that." He looked at the invitation again and cleared his throat. "There's this thing next Friday, a big event downtown. Fancy clothes, speeches, the whole deal. Would you want to come, sit with me?" She looked up, surprised. "Me? Why?" "Because you're part of everything they're honoring. Without you, none of this would have happened." Her eyes lit up. "Can I wear the blue dress?" "Absolutely." The week leading up to the summit was filled with fittings, questions, and practice speeches. Maya insisted on helping him pick his tie, settling on a deep burgundy. One, she said, made him look less business, more nice. Evelyn came over to steam her dress and braided Maya's hair while humming old gospel hymns. The penthouse, once echoing with silence, now buzzed with laughter and late-night dessert raids. The night of the summit arrived cold and clear. As they pulled up to the grand hall in a black town car, camera flashes sparked outside the entrance. Maya leaned toward the window, wide-eyed. "This feels like a movie," she whispered. Bill smiled. "Let's make it a good one." Inside, the room glittered with crystal chandeliers and silverware too delicate to trust. Tables were dressed in white linen, and servers moved like choreography. Bill introduced Maya to colleagues and board members, each one charmed by her quiet confidence. When they reached their table, Maya gasped. At each place, setting was a small, printed quote attributed to the honorees. Hers read, "Every child deserves to be seen. Maya Johnson, age 9. She looked at him, eyes full. "They put my name." "Because you matter," Bill said softly. Midway through the evening, after a violin solo and a video montage of community programs, Bill was called to the stage. He walked slowly, feeling the weight of the room, of the journey that had brought him here, not one of prestige, but of transformation. He took the microphone and scanned the audience. "A year ago," he began, "I was at a different kind of summit, one built on success, numbers, strategy, but it was missing something. Heart, connection, truth." He paused. "I met a little girl who taught me what it means to truly show up for someone, not with a check, not with a speech, but with consistency, with listening, with love." His voice thickened. "Her father was my friend. The kind of man who gave when he had nothing left, who carried others' mistakes on his shoulders. Tonight, I accept this recognition in his name, and in hers, because they reminded me of the power of simply staying. The room stood in ovation. Maya beamed, hands clapping furiously. Back at their table, as dessert was served, a woman in a sleek black dress approached. Her eyes were soft, her tone careful. "Mr. Harper, I don't mean to intrude, but my son attends your rec center. He used to come home angry, withdrawn. Now he talks about poetry and computers, and wants to volunteer." Bill smiled. "That's all him. We just opened the door." She touched his arm. "Sometimes that's all people need." Later that night, as the town car rolled through quiet streets back toward the penthouse, Maya leaned against Bill's side, sleepy but glowing. "You were amazing," she murmured. "So were you," he whispered back. She shifted. "Do you think Daddy would have liked this night?" "I think he's been here all along," Bill said. Watching, cheering. Back at home, she climbed into bed with the ease of someone who knew she belonged. Bill tucked her in, then paused at the door. "Hey," she called softly. "You said the summit was about transformation." "Yeah. Well, does that mean we're done transforming?" Bill smiled in the darkness. "Not even close." He walked out into the night, past the photo of Marcus on the hallway wall, past the framed letter Maya had written to her father now proudly displayed above the piano. The home had changed not in structure, but in spirit. Outside, the city lights blinked like silent applause. And inside, the future stirred in the quiet breathing of a girl who had brought new meaning to an old life, one brave, stubborn, beautiful moment at a time. The first knock came just after dusk, as the last orange light melted into the Denver skyline. Bill had just returned from the rec center, his coat still damp from a spring drizzle. Maya was sprawled across the living room rug, building a Lego city with Evelyn, who insisted on designing a realistic grocery store, complete with tiny checkout counters. When the knock came again, firmer this time, Bill walked to the door, uncertain. Standing there, under the porch light, was a man in his 50s, tall, gaunt, skin weathered from time and hard seasons, but it was the eye-stired, familiar that stopped Bill mid-breath. "Charles," Bill said. The man nodded slowly. "Been a long time." Too long, Bill thought. Charles Simmons had been part of their old world. A former classmate, a neighborhood ghost. He and Marcus used to trade shifts at the packing plant when life got rough. Then he vanished. "What brings you here?" Bill asked, his voice low. Charles hesitated. "Saw the news. Heard about the wall. The girl." Bill opened the door wider. "Come in." Inside, the warmth hit Charles like a wave. He removed his cap, eyes scanning the space with reverence and disbelief. "She looks like him," he murmured when he saw Maya. "Spittin' image." Bill nodded. "She's more than that. She's everything he was trying to protect." Charles rubbed his face. "I owe him. And maybe I owe her too." They sat in the kitchen. Evelyn poured coffee, her expression wary but calm. Maya, sensing the adult tension, quietly moved her Lego city to the corner and watched from afar. "I was there the night Victor got caught," Charles said finally. "The warehouse. I saw the whole thing." Bill tensed. "They offered me a deal too. Testify. Name names. I was scared. I took the deal. But when they needed someone to pin the operation, Marcus stepped in. Said he was managing inventory. I knew it was a lie. Everyone did. But no one spoke up." He looked at his hands, trembling slightly. "I've carried that weight for 25 years. Bill stared at him, emotions churning: anger, sorrow, a hollow kind of forgiveness not yet formed. "Why now?" he asked. Charles looked up. "Because you're doing what we should have done. You're keeping his name clean. I want to help, however I can." Bill leaned back, arms crossed. "Start by writing it down. Everything. For the wall." Charles nodded. "I will." After Charles left, Evelyn sat beside Bill at the kitchen table. "That man's carrying ghosts," she said. "So am I," Bill replied. Evelyn reached across and placed her hand over his. "And you're turning them into light." That weekend, Bill invited Charles to the rec center. He introduced him to Serena, to the team, to the fathers attending job training. Charles spoke to them not as a man who had all the answers, but as one who had learned the cost of silence. His words didn't come smooth or polished, but they landed deep. Maya watched from the corner, her journal open in her lap. That night, she handed Bill a fresh page she had written in neat, slanted script. Everyone carries something. Some folks carry books. Some carry pain. But the bravest ones? They carry truth, even when it's heavy. Bill read it twice. Then he folded it and slipped it into his wallet. The rec center kept growing. With new funding, they opened an after-hours study lounge. Serena spearheaded a mentorship program for teenage girls, while Charles volunteered to run workshops on life after incarceration. Slowly, the walls of the center became more than drywall, they were archives of resilience. At home, Bill and Maya settled into rituals. Sunday pancakes, Wednesday reading nights, long walks in the park where Maya insisted every squirrel had a name. She began calling him Dad, more often, casually, without ceremony. The first time she did it in public, Bill's heart nearly stopped. "Dad, can I get a pretzel?" They were at a Rockies game. Bill turned, stunned. She blinked. "What?" "You said if I felt it, I could say it." He smiled, nodded. "You can. Anytime." Now, it came naturally. "Dad, can I ride my bike? Dad, look at this drawing. Dad, I miss Grandma's cookies." The final confirmation came in the form of a letter from family court. The judge had approved the permanent guardianship signed, sealed, unchallenged. No ceremony, just a quiet envelope on a quiet Tuesday. That night, Bill framed the letter. He placed it beside the photo of Marcus on the hallway shelf. Maya walked by, noticed, and smiled. "Feels like a forever thing now." "It is," Bill said. "Forever." Spring turned to early summer. School let out. Maya ran through sprinklers in the park, her laughter echoing down the block. And Bill? Bill sat on the porch steps, sipping iced tea, listening to the world unfold around him, not in stock quotes or market forecasts, but in joy, in story, in life. For the first time in decades, he was no longer building a legacy. He was living one. And it looked like popsicle stains, late-night stories, and a little girl who had taught him what it meant to come home. The storms always came in the summer. Not just the ones that swept across Denver's skyline in flashes of lightning and rolling thunder, but the quiet storms, tooth kind, that crept into the heart without warning. Bill stood at the window of the penthouse late one evening, watching rain streak the glass like delicate scars. Behind him, Maya hummed softly, brushing her stuffed rabbit's ears as she waited for her bath to fill. "Dad?" she called from the bathroom. "Do you think thunder scares God?" Bill chuckled. "I think thunder is God's way of reminding us. He's still louder than all our worries." She considered that a moment. Then maybe he's just clearing his throat. After Maya fell asleep, Bill returned to his desk. A new email blinked at the top of his inbox. The subject line read, "Harper Foundation Audit. Immediate response required." His heart skipped. For months, things had run smoothly. The initiative had grown, donations had multiplied, and partnerships across the country were forming. But he had known, eventually, someone would come digging. The report attached wasn't a full investigation, not yet, but it hinted at discrepancies. Questions about a large anonymous donation made to the rec center's satellite fund. Something about missing documentation. Serena had flagged it weeks ago and asked for clarification. Bill had promised to look into it, but in the haze of court visits, Maya's adoption, and expanding programs, it had slipped through. The next day, he met with Serena in the center's small office, where the walls were now lined with colorful art from the kids. "I should have caught it sooner," she said, tapping the file. "But it's not about fraud, it's about optics. Someone out there wants to twist this. Make it look like your name is covering for bad bookkeeping." Bill rubbed his temple. "I'll take it head on. Call a board meeting. We'll disclose everything. I won't let this stain what we've built." She nodded. "Good, because we're not just fighting for funding anymore. We're fighting for belief." News travels fast in a city like Denver. Within a week, whispers turned into headlines. Harper Foundation faces scrutiny over youth initiative donations. Some outlets were fair, others hinted at scandal. An old rival from the corporate world gave a pointed interview questioning Bill's sudden pivot to philanthropy. Evelyn read the article over breakfast, her lips pursed. They don't understand it because they've never had to rebuild something without a blueprint. Maya, reading over her cereal bowl, frowned. They're talking about you like you're a bad guy. Bill reached for her hand. Sometimes people who don't know your heart will make up stories about it. What matters is we keep doing what's right. But the pressure built. Parents at the rec center began to worry. A few funders paused payments. One community partner backed out quietly. Bill stood in front of the wall, the voices unheard wall, and felt the weight settle on his shoulders. All those stories, all those lives now vulnerable to a lie he hadn't even told. That evening, he called a press conference. It wasn't flashy. No PR team, no teleprompter. Just a folding chair, a modest podium, and the same community room where Marcus once handed out basketballs and advice. He stood alone, facing a room filled with reporters, staff, and volunteers. Serena stood to the side, arms crossed but resolute. "I'm not here to defend a number," Bill began. "I'm here to defend a promise." He explained the donation, how it had come anonymously, how it had been processed by a former treasurer who had since moved on. He admitted the oversight, apologized, but he didn't stop there. This place was never about perfection. It was about showing up, owning our mistakes, teaching the next generation how to do the same. And that starts with me. The room was quiet. Then someone asked, "Do you think Marcus would have approved of how you handled this?" Bill looked directly at the camera. "I hope so. Because I learned it from him." That night, Maya waited up for him, curled on the couch with the rabbit in one arm and Marcus's journal in the other. "Did they believe you?" she asked sleepily. "I think the ones who needed to did." She nodded. "Then Daddy's proud." Over the next week, something changed. Quietly, without fanfare, community leaders stepped forward in support. Former students wrote letters. A city council member visited the center unannounced, then tweeted, "Integrity isn't about never falling. It's about rising with witnesses." Even Victor Greaves, now clean, now employed, returned to the center one afternoon with a check for $200. "It's not much," he said, "but it's mine, and it's real." Bill placed it in the donation jar at the front desk. That's what this place runs on. Not just dollars, but dignity. By month's end, the audit cleared. The donation was deemed legitimate, a clerical error to blame. The headlines faded, but the lessons remained. That Sunday, at church, Pastor Clayton invited Bill to speak briefly. He hesitated, then nodded. "We build things because we believe in what's possible," Bill said. "But storms will come, and when they do, we don't run, we plant our feet, and we say, this still matters." Later, as Maya tugged on his sleeve in the parking lot, she asked, "Can we go get pie?" He laughed. "After a week like this, we deserve the whole bakery." And as they drove through the winding streets, past murals of kids laughing, past signs for free tutoring and open gym hours, Bill knew storms were inevitable. But so was the clearing sky. And as long as Maya kept believing in him and in herself, he'd weather every one of them. Together, they were rewriting what legacy looked like. Not flawless, but full of heart, and here to stay. The air carried that late summer warmth that hinted at change, the kind that settled in your bones just before the leaves turned. On an ordinary Thursday afternoon, Bill and Maya walked through City Park. Maya's hand nestled in his as they traced the old brick paths toward the duck pond. She had a paper bag full of bread crusts and a mission: feed every waddling creature that looked remotely hungry. "Ducks always look like they're in a hurry," she giggled, tossing a piece. "But they never go anywhere important." Bill smiled, breathing in the stillness. "Kind of like adults, sometimes." She looked up at him, curious. "Like who?" "Like the old version of me." They sat near the pond, Maya humming a tune while tossing bread. Bill leaned back on the bench, eyes scanning the trees, the sky, the people. That's when he noticed the man on the next bench, over-older, wiry, his coat too heavy for the weather. He looked out of place, yet perfectly still, like he'd been sitting there long before the world changed around him. Their eyes met briefly. The man nodded. "You Harper?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Bill straightened. "Yes." The man reached into his coat and pulled out a small folded paper. "Name's Daryl. I knew Marcus. We worked nights at the mill when things got rough." Bill took the paper, unfolded it. It was a letter. The handwriting was shaky, unfamiliar, but earnest. "I was supposed to give this to someone," Daryl said. "Been carrying it around for months. Didn't know if it was meant for you. but you're the only Harper I know helping kids instead of chasing stocks. Bill scanned the letter. It wasn't from Daryl. It was from Marcus, dated 2 years before his death. If this ever reaches Bill, tell him I don't blame him. I never did. We made choices back then with no maps and no lifelines. But if he's reading this, I hope he's finally stopped running. Because the world needs more builders. Not just of towers, but of people. Bill folded the letter, carefully, as if holding breath. Where did you get this? He asked. Daryl shrugged. Marcus gave me a box before he passed. Said it wasn't time yet. I opened it last week. Your name was on the envelope. Bill looked away, overwhelmed. Maya had wandered a few feet away, talking to a duck like it understood every word. I lost a lot of years, Bill whispered. Daryl tilted his head. Then make the ones left count more. Before he left, Daryl handed over a key, a small, rusted thing attached to a fading tag that read, Coach's Locker. He said it belonged to Marcus's old locker at the original rec center, now barely standing, boarded up and mostly forgotten. That evening, after dropping Maya off with Evelyn for their weekly girls' night, Bill drove alone to the old building on Brighton Boulevard. The place was a husk, now graffiti-stained, windows broken, roof sagging. He parked under a flickering streetlight and let himself in through a side door still cracked from an old break-in years back. The locker room smelled like dust and distant memories. He found Marcus's locker near the back number 33. The key slid in, resisted slightly, then clicked open. Inside was a small shoebox, brittle with time. Bill lifted it carefully. Inside, wrapped in a faded t-shirt, were fragments. A photo of Maya as a baby in her father's arms, a cassette tape labeled Practice, 2003, a dog-eared copy of Baldwin's The Fire Next Time, and a folded paper with a handwritten list titled People Who Changed My Life. Bill's name was fourth. He sank onto the bench, the weight of years catching up. Here, in this room, Marcus had fought his own battle, some invisible, some unspoken. And he had kept these mementos not as trophies, but as reminders of the life he chose to build, one brick at a time. Back at the penthouse, Bill placed the box on the bookshelf next to Maya's drawings and the framed guardianship order. He didn't tell her everything that night, but he read to her from Baldwin's book, his voice steady. He said, Love takes off the masks we fear we cannot live without, and know we cannot live within. What do you think that means, Maya? She yawned. Maybe, that love lets you be real, even when being real is scary. He kissed her forehead. Exactly. A few days later, the city announced the building where the original rec center had stood was scheduled for demolition. Bill made a call to the city council, then to the Historical Preservation Society, then to 3 architects he trusted. By the end of the month, plans were underway, not to preserve the ruin, but to rebuild it. A new Marcus Johnson Youth Pavilion, modern, safe, community-owned. Every brick a tribute to a man who once handed out basketballs and hope. They held a small ceremony when the old building was officially cleared. Maya wore her blue dress and carried Marcus's shoebox, which they buried beneath the new foundation, sealed in a time capsule. Why here? She asked. Because this is where your dad started, Bill said. And this is where you'll help others begin. She nodded solemnly. Then I want to come here every week, to read, to help, to listen. Bill smiled. And you will. You'll be the heartbeat of it. As the concrete dried and the sun began to set, Maya turned to him. Do you think we're done with the hard stuff? He looked out at the empty lot becoming something new. But I think we're finally strong enough for whatever comes next. And as they stood together, under the orange sky, the storms of yesterday began to fade into the promise of tomorrow, one truth, one act of love, one legacy at a time. The morning of the grand opening arrived crisp and bright, the kind of Denver day that felt like it had been waiting its whole life to shine. The Marcus Johnson Youth Pavilion stood proud at the corner of 6th and Brighton, a new cornerstone of the neighborhood, rising from the footprint of the past. Wide glass doors framed the entrance, and a polished steel sign shimmered in the sunlight, etched with Marcus's name and a single line underneath. Built by truth, held by love. A crowd had already begun to gather when Bill and Maya arrived. Maya wore a white blouse and dark blue skirt, her hair pulled back with a ribbon, the same ribbon her father had once tied around her wrist as a baby, preserved carefully all these years. Bill had considered giving a speech, something formal, something polished, but in the end, he'd decided on simplicity. The building would speak for itself. City officials shook hands. Local news vans angled for good light. Kids ran between folding chairs and balloons tied to railings. But amid the celebration, Bill noticed something quieter, familiar faces. Faces from the past. Faces that had once avoided eye contact now smiled with warmth. People who had known Marcus. People who had doubted Bill. They had all Kamino just for the building, but for what it represented. At the heart of the crowd stood Serena, clipboard in hand, her eyes scanning everything with her usual intensity. She spotted Bill and waved him over. "It's perfect," she said. "You did it." "No," Bill corrected, his voice soft. "We did." Just before the ribbon cutting, Maya tugged on his coat. "Can I say something?" she asked. Bill blinked. "To the crowd?" She nodded. "To everyone." "Ah." He hesitated, then smiled. "Of course." They adjusted the microphone, and Maya stood on a wooden box so she could reach it. The murmurs quieted as she began to speak. "My name is Maya Johnson. I'm 9 years old. This place is named after my dad, and I think he would have liked it." She paused, glancing at the building. "He used to say that a home wasn't just where you sleep. It's where people believe in you. That's what this place is now. A home. For kids who need someone to believe in them." The crowd grew still. Some wiped tears. Others bowed their heads. "I hope," she continued, voice steady, "that every kid who walks through those doors knows they matter, that they belong, and that even if the world forgets them, this place never will." Applause followed loud, heartfelt, rising like a tide. Bill reached for Maya as she stepped down, and she hugged him fiercely. "I think he heard that," she whispered. "I know he did," Bill said, his voice rough with pride. The ribbon was cut. The doors opened. Inside, the pavilion was bright and inviting. A reading room filled with books, a computer lab with donated tech, a basketball court with new hardwood, and above it, a mural of Marcus' arms outstretched, as if gathering everyone beneath him. In the back hallway, beside the staff lounge, hung the original Voices Unheard wall. Preserved, expanded, framed. Stories old and new mingled there now. A living archive of pain, hope, and truth. That afternoon, as visitors explored, a boy approached Bill. He was maybe 12, lanky, with a chipped tooth and eyes too wary for his age. "You the guy in charge?" he asked. "Sometimes," Bill replied with a smile. The boy pointed toward the game room. "Can I come here even if I don't got nobody to sign me in?" "You're already signed in," Bill said. "You're part of us now." The boy nodded and wandered off, shoulders looser. Later, after the crowds thinned, Evelyn arrived with a box of cupcakes and a hug that nearly lifted Bill off the ground. "You did good, Harper," she whispered. "Marcus would have danced." Bill chuckled. "He'd say we overdid it." "He'd say that," Evelyn agreed. "But he'd stay till the lights went out." That night, back home, Bill and Maya sat on the balcony, watching the city flicker in the distance. "Do you think it's done?" Maya asked. "The pavilion?" She nodded. "The hard parts." Bill thought for a long moment. "Some parts, maybe, but life always finds new ones. That's okay, though." "Why?" "Because we've got roots now, and roots keep us standing." Maya leaned against his shoulder. "Then I'm glad we planted them together." As stars blinked into view and the hum of night settled in, Bill Harper felt something he hadn't known in decades. Peace. Not the kind that came from quiet, but the kind that came from purpose, from presence, from a life rebuilt, not in marble or money, but in connection. The pavilion was more than a building. It was a promise, a sanctuary, a second chance for those still writing their first chapter. And for Bill and Maya, it was home, at last. 2 weeks after the grand opening, the pavilion pulsed with life. Laughter echoed through the halls, basketballs bounced in rhythmic thuds, and voicesso, many voices filled every corner with possibility. Bill arrived early each morning, coffee in one hand and Marcus's journal tucked under his arm like a compass. The pages were dog-eared now, notes scribbled in the margins, memories whispering guidance from a man no longer here but never far. One particular morning, He paused at the front doors, watching a group of kids race toward the center. Among them was a girl named Liana, just 11, small for her age but fierce in spirit. She had been quiet at first, barely speaking, hiding behind her big brother like a shadow, but now she was leading group projects, writing poems on the community board. Her latest read, "The sun isn't loud, but we still feel it." Bill stepped inside, greeted Serena with a nod, and headed toward the conference room where a quarterly board meeting was about to begin. The agenda was simple. Review program progress, discuss budget updates, and plan next quarter's outreach. But as the meeting opened, a name caught him off guard. "Victor Greaves," Serena said, scanning her notes. "He's submitted a proposal, wants to start a re-entry mentorship program for fathers coming out of incarceration." There was a beat of silence in the room. A few raised eyebrows. One board member, a retired banker named Collins, leaned forward. "We're not in the business of rehabilitation, are we? I thought this place was about the kids." Bill met his eyes evenly. "It is, but kids don't live in isolation. They live in families, some broken, some healing. If we ignore the people raising them, we fail them too." Serena chimed in. "Victor's idea is solid. Peer-based mentoring, job skills, parenting support, low cost, high impact." Another member asked cautiously, "You trust him?" "I trust what he's become," Bill replied. "And I trust what this place can help people become." After some discussion, the proposal passed narrowly, but it passed. That afternoon, Bill found Victor in the pavilion's garden courtyard, tending to the new herb boxes with his sleeves rolled up and dirt under his fingernails. "You're getting good at this," Bill said. Victor chuckled. "You mean convincing people I'm worth a second chance?" "I mean building something, with your hands, with your name." Victor looked up. "I was terrified to ask, thought someone would laugh, or worse, say yes and wait for me to fail." Bill nodded. "We don't wait for people to fail here. We teach them how to stand." They stood in companionable silence for a while, the kind of quiet that only exists between men who have lived through the same fire, even if on opposite ends. Inside, Maya was reading aloud to a group of younger children. Her voice carried across the halls, steady and sure. She was reading a story about a boy who built a tower to the sky out of cardboard and string. The final line made Bill pause. The tower didn't reach heaven, but it made the boy brave enough to look up. Later that week, Evelyn invited them all over for dinner. Bill, Maya, Serena, and even Charles, who had grown into his role as the unofficial wisdom keeper of the pavilion. Her house smelled of cinnamon and roasted chicken, and her living room was cluttered with crocheted blankets, framed photos, and the hum of jazz on vinyl. Between bites, Charles leaned over and said to Bill, "You ever think about writing this down? Not just the speeches, the whole journey, the mistakes, the mercy." Bill raised an eyebrow. "A book?" Charles nodded. "Call it whatever you want, but it deserves to be remembered." Maya, eavesdropping from the corner, chimed in. "Can I draw the cover?" Bill laughed. "Only if you make me look like a superhero." She smirked. "A superhero with coffee stains and dad jokes?" "Exactly." That night, after everyone had gone home and the dishes were drying in the rack, Bill sat at his desk, journal open. He began to write not just about Marcus or Maya or the pavilion, but about the silence he had lived in for too long, and the sound of it breaking. Page after page poured out, the story of a man who had almost lost himself and the girl who helped him find the way back. Somewhere around midnight, he paused, pen hovering. Outside, the city was quiet, but he could hear echoes the kind that live in walls and hearts and time. He wrote one final sentence before closing the journal for the night. "Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it's the soft voice that says, 'I'm still here.'" And the pavilion stood tall in the dark, lights glowing in every room. A beacon for those still wandering, still hoping, still listening. Autumn painted the city in hues of amber and gold, the kind of season that whispered both endings and beginnings. The pavilion had settled into a rhythm: afternoon chess games, weekend art classes, the soft scuff of sneakers on the court, and the laughter of kids no longer afraid to take up space. To anyone passing by, it might have seemed like just another community center, but to Bill, it had become something sacred, a cathedral of second chances. One crisp Saturday morning, Maya sat at the reception desk, elbows propped on a stack of books, pencil tapping thoughtfully against her chin. She was working on a school assignment. What does legacy mean to you? Bill walked by, coffee in hand. Stuck? She looked up. I know what it feels like. I just don't know how to explain it. Bill sat beside her. Maybe start with something simple. A moment. Maya thought for a second, then smiled. The moment I called you Dad for the first time. He felt a tug in his chest, gentle, deep. Then start there. That same afternoon, Serena approached Bill with a surprising update. We've been nominated for the National Community Impact Award. Bill blinked. What? Who nominated us? I don't know, she said with a sly smile. But I have a few guesses. The award, one of the most respected recognitions in the country, was known for honoring not just outcomes, but authenticity, places and people who transformed communities without forgetting who they were. They want a short video submission, Serena added. A 3-minute story. Bill looked around at the kids building birdhouses in the courtyard, at Victor leading a parenting circle in the West Wing, at Maya now giggling with a shy new girl over coloring books. I think we've already filmed it, he murmured. They compiled footage, Maya reading at open mic night, Evelyn hugging a mother in tears, Charles laughing during lunch duty, a young boy triumphantly tying his first tie during life skills class. The final scene showed Bill placing Marcus's photo in the pavilion's legacy corner, where names were engraved in brass not for wealth, but for impact. The video was sent, and life went on. Weeks later, the call came. They'd won. The ceremony would be in Washington, D.C. Serena and Victor would join Bill. Maya would come too as the closing speaker. She was stunned, then giddy. Me? Why me? Because you're the reason we kept going, Bill said. You're what this place means. The night of the award arrived, and the Kennedy Center glowed with elegance. As the audience hushed, Maya stepped onto the stage, her voice calm but bright, carrying into the high arches above. I used to think heroes wore capes, she began. Now I know they also wear aprons and sneakers, and sometimes they're tired, but they still show up. She talked about Marcus, about Bill, about her new family and how the pavilion wasn't just a building, it was a promise. When my dad passed away, I thought I'd never feel safe again. But then someone picked up the pieces. Not because he had to, because he chose to. That's legacy. That's love. The crowd stood. Tears and applause filled the room. When she returned to her seat, Bill took her hand and squeezed it gently. You made him proud, he whispered. On the flight home, Maya slept with her head against his shoulder, the award plaque tucked between them. Bill didn't sleep. He watched the stars outside the window, remembering the years he'd spent chasing everything but meaning. Now, he held it. Back in Denver, the pavilion hosted a quiet celebration. No press, no speeches, just music, dancing, and potluck dishes made with love. Liana read a new poem. Victor handed out handmade bracelets that said, "Still Rising." Evelyn led a toast. To Marcus, she said, and to everyone who believed in something better. Bill raised his glass. And to Maya, for teaching me what better really looks like. As the evening drew to a close, Bill stood at the edge of the courtyard. Maya came up beside him, her coat zipped to her chin, cheeks flushed from dancing. What now? She asked. Bill looked at the building, at the people still laughing inside, at the mural of Marcus smiling down from the gym wall. Now we keep the light on, he said, for the next person trying to find their way. Maya nodded. Like a lighthouse. Exactly. She slipped her hand into his. Then let's build more of them. And there, under a sky full of quiet stars, father and daughter stood side by side, a legacy not etched in stone but written in lives, in laughter, in second chances. A story still unfolding, still reaching, still home. The story teaches us that true legacy is not built through wealth or power, but through compassion, resilience, and the courage to stand by others when it matters most. It reminds us that healing begins when we choose to listen, to protect, and to uplift even when the world has turned its back. Through Bill and Maya, we see that family is not always born, but built with love and commitment. And above all, the story is a powerful testament to the idea that justice, though often quiet, finds its voice through acts of kindness and the unshakable pursuit of truth.